What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. Alright, so we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 25 right now. The latest actual, subsection heading that we've gotten in any chapter was back in chapter 23, when it just said there were miscellaneous regulations. So I suppose that's what this falls under. Which probably means it's going to look rather disjointed, and each little, paragraph in here is probably going to cover a slightly different topic. Maybe. Enough speculating on that, I guess. We might as well just hop right in and start reading here. So, Deuteronomy chapter 25, here we go. Suppose two people take a dispute to court, and the judges declare that one is right and the other is wrong. If the person in the wrong is sentenced to be flogged, the judge must command him to lie down and be beaten in his presence with the number of lashes appropriate to the crime. But never give more than 40 lashes. More than 40 lashes would publicly humiliate your neighbor. Okay. Not really outright stated why 40 is the number there. But I mean, for a genuine, flogging, whipping, beating kind of thing like that, 40 is a lot. I mean, even just to, do it, deliver the hit, wind it back up. Even if you were doing, every other second, you get past 40 and you're pushing, a minute and a half at that point. And that's just if it was going at that speed. So yeah, more than 40 does seem a bit excessive. I'm just not entirely sure why 40 is the cutoff. Other than, 40 is a number that has come up in some other contexts. So, back with Noah and the Ark, it was 40 days and nights that there was the flooding. 40 also does show up as a significant number later on in certain instances. So, kind of like how 7 is a significant number relevant to, creation and the Sabbath and things like that, then, 40 also becomes somewhat of a significant number for some things. Also, yeah, agreed with Owl here. By the time you get to that many lashes, it's just it all kind of starts to feel the same. But yeah. Now, there were a couple of previous chapters that mentioned some punishments and didn't really get very specific with those. I wonder if in some of those contexts, the, flogging and such mentioned here would apply. It's not outright stated, but it's possible. In fact, I'm trying to remember. There was a recent chapter where it mentioned, a punishment, but then also a payment on top of the punishment. But the punishment was unnamed at that point. So that makes me think that the flogging and such mentioned here might apply to that kind of situation, which I think was basically falsely accusing someone. I forget if it was specific to, relational infidelity or what, but it was basically, it was definitely a false accusation of some sort. But I digress. Suppose that amount would rip up your back pretty bad and make it more likely for infection if not cared for well. Yeah. Oh, especially if they were actually, doing it with... I don't know if anybody watching this might have seen The Passion of the Christ, but, if you saw some of that scene, then the way that the ends of it were like specifically made to be sharp so that it dug in a bit and could actually like kind of rip stuff out. Oh man, that by the time you got past 40 lashes there, that would be just like absolutely brutal, if not like very likely fatal, just because of how much is getting probably opened up beneath the skin at that point. But anyway, okay, no, don't want to dwell on that for too long. So, let's carry on with verse 4 here. You must not muzzle an ox to keep it from eating as it treads out the grain. Okay, just a random thing, I guess, to, you know, help keep the ox motivated and fed. Sure, whatever. Verse 5. If two brothers are living together on the same property and one of them dies without a son, his widow may not be married to anyone from outside the family. Instead, her husband's brother should marry her and have intercourse with her to fulfill the duties of a brother-in-law. The first son she bears to him will be considered the son of the dead brother, so that his name will not be forgotten in Israel. Kind of a weird thing, but, I mean, I kind of get the intent behind that, of, you know, wanting to carry on the legacy. I just, yeah, I don't know. Times were different back then. That's definitely not something that would be viewed so highly in this day and age, at least in most of the broader society. But still, I guess, again, the point was to, you know, kind of preserve the name of the original husband. And so, yeah. But there's a caveat that we get to in verse 7 here, so maybe I should just continue. But if the man refuses to marry his brother's widow, she must go to the town gate and say to the elders assembled there, "My husband's brother refuses to preserve his brother's name in Israel. He refuses to fulfill the duties of a brother-in-law by marrying me." The elders of the town will then summon him and talk with him. If he still refuses and says, "I don't want to marry her," the widow must walk over to him in the presence of the elders, pull his sandal from his foot, and spit in his face. Then she must declare, "This is what happens to a man who refuses to provide his brother with children." Ever afterward in Israel, his family will be referred to as the family of the man whose sandal was pulled off. So, that later part, I think, is more so just there to bring shame upon and also kind of discourage what was talked about in verses 5 and 6. Or to discourage the refusal thereof. Because, again, trying to preserve the legacy and the name and whatnot within the bloodline in particular is the closest way to do that, I guess. But, yeah. And it's not stated what the motivation would be for not wanting to carry that out. Because I assume it doesn't need to be stated. It's just like, hey, whatever the reason happens to be, if they refuse, here's how they get treated. So, yeah, again, not something we would generally see in modern society. But, so, I don't know. I feel like I gotta take a slight tangent here and just say that, like, just because we have certain cultural norms today, that doesn't necessarily mean outright that it's any better or worse or whatever than what is stated earlier on in the Bible or even elsewhere throughout the Bible. Like, it's... just like there were some things, like some commands that I'm pretty sure were more of a, you know, don't do this because other people around you who don't follow God do this. This, I mean, or maybe not even just this specifically, but some of these regulations that are mentioned could also be more so saying, all right, let's make sure that we're doing things different than other people groups around us. Us in this case being, you know, the Jews/Israelites. But yeah, I don't really know, but I do wonder if, like, there are some things today that seem to be the cultural standard or whatever that might also not really be God's ideal. Not going to get into too much detail on what those could be, because honestly, how are we to know? I mean, yeah, there is some stuff stated in the Bible, especially New Testament, that is even then like, all right, hey, maybe don't do this or that. Like, being unfaithful in marriage is generally one of those things that even all throughout the Bible, it's like, hey, no, this isn't good. But for the stuff that has changed a bit in the way it's conveyed throughout the Bible, I kind of wonder about that stuff a little bit. But I digress. Okay, tangent over. Just wanted to put that out there, because that is a thought that kind of crosses my mind, especially with some, you know, modern day conversations that tend to come up quite a bit in different circles, shall we say. But anyway, okay, enough about that, I guess. Moving along, verse 11. If two Israelite men get into a fight, and the wife of one tries to rescue her husband by grabbing the testicles of the other man, you must cut off her hand. Show her no pity. It's okay. You'd have to assume that is something that would be done as, like, sort of a last or very desperate resort in the situation, because there's other ways to try and, you know, intervene in the situation. So, yeah. Plus, it mentioned just a chapter or two ago, I'm thinking it was, it would have been chapter 23 early on, that it mentioned specifically about men with crushed testicles not being able to go into worship at the temple. Yeah, let's not, I guess part of this was, let's not increase the chances of that, maybe? Okay. I don't really have any other thoughts there. Verse 13. You must use accurate scales when you weigh out merchandise, and you must use full and honest measures. Yes, always use honest weights and measures, so that you may enjoy a long life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. All who cheat with dishonest weights and measures are detestable to the Lord your God. Now, why would weights be so important, and the scales and whatnot? Because that was kind of how they did payment of things. The, you know, silver or whatever material shekels that were mentioned as payments and whatnot in previous chapters, then, you know, those were more so like not just assigned a specific value per se. It was more so, all right, here's this coin that weighs this much. So then the payment would generally be done by the weight of, you know, one thing versus that to see if it's the proper amount, rather than like sitting there and counting everything out. It was, I guess, somewhat of a way of, you know, speeding up the payment process to some effect. But some people might try to cheat this system with inaccurate scales or weights. So, yeah. That's... No. God doesn't like people being cheated out of stuff, unsurprisingly. So, yeah, thus the encouragement to use, you know, honest weights and measures and accurate scales. I think I'm done with my thoughts on the accurate weights and whatnot. I guess we'll wrap up the chapter. It is kind of a short one, so. Verse 17. Never forget what the Amalekites did to you as you came from Egypt. I almost said out of Egypt. They attacked you when you were exhausted and weary, and they struck down those who were straggled behind. They had no fear of God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your enemies in the land he is giving you as a special possession, you must destroy the Amalekites and erase their memory from under heaven. Never forget this. Yeah, not exactly the context in which it's mentioned, but the whole idea of vengeance being God's, I feel like maybe kind of applies to this. And this is showing kind of the revenge of God. But, yeah, that's all kind of self-contained and pretty self-explanatory there. And yes, very much miscellaneous and a lot of not very much related things to each other. Why it shows up in this order, I have no clue. But, anyway. That's, I guess, gonna do it then for Deuteronomy 25. Okay, so I feel like going back and looking at it that I need to clarify one thing. When it mentioned the brother marrying, you know, his other brother's widow, it did specify that that was the case if they were living in the same house or something like that. So maybe a bunch of us get a pass nowadays because, like, we don't really have living situations like that very often. But still, it's not a practice that's generally followed in this day and age. Just thought I'd point out that little detail there, though. Not like it's really expected of a lot of us in our current situations. But anyway, enough about that. As always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell if you're on YouTube to get updates when I post new videos. You can follow me on Rumble if you're seeing this there, as well as any of the social media links mentioned down in the description. And below there, leave comments with any thoughts you have. Sorry for the little bit of stumbling on my words there. Anyway, that's going to do it for now. As always, hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video. But until then, stay cool, people.